Our story today is called The Lighthouse Keeper's Cat. And this is a story about a cat called Hamish. And he lives with the lighthouse keeper. And the lighthouse keeper's job is to look after the lighthouse. Now, I'm sure you know what a lighthouse is for. If you're not sure, go and find out. Go and ask somebody. I've never been inside a real lighthouse, but I know friends of mine who have stayed and had their holidays in a real lighthouse. So I wish I could do that. So let's see what happens with Hamish in his lighthouse. Hamish lived with Mr. and Mrs. Grinling in a little white cottage on the cliffs. Mr. Grinling was the lighthouse keeper. Some days, Hamish went to work with Mr. Grinling. He liked to help in the lighthouse. When visitors came, Hamish would show them around. "What a magnificent cat!" they would exclaim. "Hamish, king of the lighthouse." Some days, Hamish worked with Mrs. Grinling. He liked digging in the garden where she'd planted the seeds. He also liked to help with the cooking. "Fish with everything" was Hamish's motto. "Not in chocolate cake," said Mrs. Grinling firmly. A lot of the time, Hamish liked to sleep. One night, when he was curled up in his favourite place, he heard Mr. and Mrs. Grinling talking. "They were there again today," said Mr. Grinling, "scampering and squeaking. The inspector of lighthouses is coming next week, and he says mice might eat the wiring." "What about Hamish?" asked Mrs. Grinling. "He might catch some for you." Mr. Grinling chuckled. "Our Hamish catch mice? Really, Mrs. G, he's much too plump and well fed." "Well, he might be persuaded if he wasn't quite so well fed," said Mrs. Grinling. "He might chase mice if he didn't have any breakfast before he went to the lighthouse." "You mean starve him?" whispered Mr. Grinling. "Shh, Mrs. G, he'll be upset if he hears you." Hamish was upset. Very upset. No breakfast, she had said. Starve him, he had said. "Well, my quivering ginger whiskers," he thought. "We'll see about that. Nobody starves the lighthouse cat. If they don't love me anymore, I'll go somewhere else to live." And early next morning, Hamish left home. As he made his way to the village, he met all kinds of strange creatures. Some wanted to chase him, and some wanted to play. He was delighted when he smelled a house. Fish," sniffed Hamish. "Probably shark." "Look, Mum," called a little boy. "There's an enormous cat at our door. I think he's hungry. Can we feed him?" Here's where Hamish went on his adventures. Like, there's the lighthouse over here. He came all the way around the village, over the bridge. And here he is at the house with the little boy. Hamish liked the breakfast that they gave him. He liked the big children. They played hide and seek and chased the mice with him. He didn't like the baby. It rolled on him and squashed his ears. "Not bad though," thought Hamish as he jumped up to sleep beside the stove. "I like this house. I think I'll stay." "What's this?" exclaimed the mother. "A cat who jumps on benches? A scavenging cat? Not in this house. Scat cat," she said. "Out you go." And she shut the door behind him. "Well, my quivering whiskers," thought Hamish. "We'll see about that. Nobody shouts at this lighthouse cat." And he stalked off down the road. A tabby kitten dropped on him from a tree. "Play with me and you can share my dinner." Hamish liked the dinner so much that he forgot to share. The kitten swung on his tail. "Play with me and you can sleep in my bed." Hamish slept in the bed, but he was so large that there wasn't room for the kitten. "Who's your ginger friend?" asked the old man. The kitten hissed at Hamish. He wasn't a friend. He didn't share. But Hamish wanted to stay. He liked the dinner and he liked the bed. "I'll show them how clever I am," he thought. "I'll make them look at me." Look at all the things that he's doing. Singing and jumping around and showing off. But the old man and the kitten took no notice. They snored and purred together. "Well, my quivering ginger whiskers," Hamish glared. "We'll see about that. Nobody ignores the Lighthouse cat." But he didn't stay grumpy for long. The sun warmed his orange whiskers, and the smell of warm mouse tickled his nose. It was nearly dark when Hamish found a yard. He looked around. This is no place for a lighthouse cat. Probably mice. Probably rats even. Cats. They were not pleased to see Hamish. "Who invited you?" snarled a tattered grey cat. "This is our place. We don't like strangers," hissed a one-eyed black cat. "Skedaddle, mush, beat it. You don't belong here." Hamish did skedaddle, right to the top of the tallest tree. "Well, my quivering ginger whiskers," he puffed. "We'll see about that. Nobody snarled at the Lighthouse cat." He peered over the branches. The cat's eyes gleamed below. "Perhaps I'll just stay up here for a while," thought Hamish. The lights of the village blinked around him. Far away, another light flashed. Hamish sat up. My lighthouse! He thought about Mr. and Mrs. Grinling. He thought about the little white cottage. The leaves of the trees rustled, and the tree began to sway. "It's time to go home," thought Hamish. He looked down the tree again. It was too dark to see the ground any more. "I don't like going down," thought Hamish. "I can't go down. I want to go home." He yowled and he yowled, but no one heard him. Then the thunder rumbled and the rain poured down. He yowled again, but still nobody heard him. After a while the rain stopped and a soggy, sad ginger cat went to sleep. Mrs. Grinling heard the thunder too. "Oh, my poor Hamish," she cried to Mr. Grinling. "Where is he? He'll be so frightened." There, my dear," soothed Mr. Grinling. "You know our Hamish. He's a clever cat. He'll be snug and warm, or I'll eat my hat." Next morning, Mrs. Grinling was up very early. There was no sign of Hamish. "I'm going out to search for him," she said to Mr. Grinling. "He might be hurt." Before she left, she did some cooking, and then she set off for the village on her bike. Round and up and down she cycled. Every now and then she would stop and take something out of her basket. 3 seagulls arrived at a very tall tree near the village. They flew around it and squawked. "What a caterwauling!" exclaimed Mrs. Grinling. "What have they seen in that tree?" The 3 seagulls woke Hamish with their loud noise. He "Hamish!" called Mrs. Grinling. He looked down. His whiskers quivered. "I know that smell." His nose nearly fell off his face. It was his favourite dinner. Stargazy pie. Mrs. Grinling had cooked it specially. They weren't going to starve him after all. He meowed and meowed. "Oh, you foolish cat," said Mrs. Grinling fondly. "I'll come up and get you." She put the Stargazy pie in the basket and climbed up to the top of the tree. Hamish was so excited that he fell onto the pie, and Mrs. Grinling lowered the basket to the ground. Mr. Grinling was delighted to see Hamish home again. "Just in time too," he said. "Please, Hamish, I need your help. If Mrs. Grinling cooks you another Stargazy pie, could you persuade the mice to find a new home?" Hamish meowed. Next morning, Hamish and Mr. Grinling rowed out to the lighthouse. While Mr. Grinling worked, Hamish visited the mice. When the inspector of lighthouses visited, there were no mice scampering or squeaking. Mr. Grinling was very happy. He patted Hamish fondly. "A great mouse chaser," he said. The mice were very happy. They nibbled some crumbs and tried not to squeak. Hamish was very happy. He stretched out beside the stove. "Well, my quivering ginger whiskers," he thought. "He's right about that. I'm the cleverest, I'm the greatest, I'm the Lighthouse cat." There you go. And if you like that story, there's lots more stories about the lighthouse keeper's cat. Where are they? The lighthouse keeper's lunch and the lighthouse keeper's picnic. So you could have a look out for those. So that's all for today. See you next time.